Om Amriteshwarye Namaha. Welcome to this week's Amrita Chintanam, the virtual satsang. Let's begin the session by invoking the blessings of the divine. ध्यायामो धवलावगुण्ठनवतीं तेजोमयीं नैष्टिकीं स्निग्धापाङ्गविलोकिनीं भगवतीं मन्दस्मितश्रीमुखीं वात्सल्यामृतवर्षिणीं सुमधुरं सङ्कीर्तनालापिनीं श्यामाङ्गीं मधुसिक्तसूक्तम् अमृतानन्दात्मिकाम् ईश्वरी। ॐ अमृतेश्वर्यै नमः। ॐ अमृतेश्वर्यै नमः। ॐ अमृतेश्वर्यै नमः। I once again welcome each one of you who have joined us today for Amrita Chintanam, the virtual satsang. Over the last couple of days, we all have been pondering on Amma's question. Is Ramarajya possible in today's times? If so, how? Pujya Swami Amrita Gitanandapuri Ji has given us insights on this during his last sessions. Swamiji discussed the importance of festivals, their role in bringing people together by promoting the feeling of unity and oneness with the entire universe. In the same line of thought, Swamiji gave a brief introduction about Grihasthashrama. Just like the quality and strength of a wall depends on the quality and strength of each brick in the wall, so too the quality and excellence of a society depends on the quality of each family in it. If the family unit is strong, united and responsible, the society too reflects in excellence. To continue our discussion today, we have with us Amma's beloved son from Ernakulam, Shri Madhu VG, who will be addressing us on Grihasthashrama through Brahmacharya, a model for Ramarajya. He is an assistant professor in the Department of English at St. Peter's College, Kolanjeri, Cochin, Kerala. He holds an MA, MPhil, B.Ed and has also submitted the PhD thesis at MG University, Kottayam. His areas of special interest are art and culture, Eastern philosophy, Indian classical literature. In addition, he is trained in classical vocal and in violin. He is a regular contributor for the monthly spiritual magazine of Mata Amritandamayi Math, Madhurvani. He conducts personal development programs at Amritapuri, Ernakulam and Bangalore. His lifelong association with Pujya Swami Purnamritanandapuri Ji and Pujya Swami Amrita Gitanandapuri Ji has enriched his life and work. I consider it my privilege to welcome Shri Madhu Ji for the session. Welcome Madhu Ji.
ध्यायामो धवलावगुण्ठनवतीं तेजोमयीं नैष्ठिकीं स्निग्धापाङ्गविलोकिनीं भगवतीं मन्दस्मितश्रीमुखीं वात्सल्यामृतवर्षिणीं सुमधुरं सङ्कीर्तनालापिनीं श्यामाङ्गीं मधुसिक्तसूक्तिम् अमृतानन्दात्मिकाम् ईश्वरी। ॐ अमृतेश्वर्यै नमः। ॐ नमः शिवाय। My humble prostrations at Amma's lotus feet, my respectful pranams at the holy feet of Shri Amrita Gitanandapuri Swamiji, my respectful greetings and regards to all of you. In this session, we will be looking at Brahmacharya as a unifying principle that holds together the integrity of a whole nation. I have titled this session as Grihasthashrama through Brahmacharya, a model for Ramarajya. The title of this session might seem a little strange and intriguing because it consists of seemingly disconnected and irreconcilable ideas. Yes, it is true that the terminology used here is very ancient. It may even appear archaic by modern standards, but that is only at the surface. The beauty of Indian philosophy, or Indian perspectives, or Indian perceptions, in fact, we call them darshanas, the Indian postulations and explications of various aspects of life and existence, are usually called darshanas, meaning visions or insights. So, the beauty of Indian philosophy is that its quintessence is eternal. So, its elements are at once ancient and modern. It is both ancient and modern. So, for the same reason, they hold great relevance for contemporary social life. So, in this session, we will be looking at the following points: the idea of Ramarajya, the four phases in an individual's life, or the four ashramas, the relationship between Grihasthashrama and Ramarajya, the two paths towards fulfillment of life, namely the Pravritti Marga and the Nivritti Marga, the meaning and relevance of Brahmacharya in Grihasthashrama, the difference between the implications of Brahmacharya for a monk and a householder, such things. So, we will briefly look at these concepts or even allied concepts, and we will attempt a discussion of how these things contribute towards a Ramarajya. So, the idea of Ramarajya, we'll begin with that. I think we can begin from the title itself, because then it will be easy for us to travel through the concepts included in this brief session within the small period of time available for us. Let us begin with the key term, Ramarajya itself. Ramarajya is a much discussed word today. Not only much discussed, even much debated. The very mention of the word often raises eyebrows and creates flutters, at least in certain circles. Intellectuals feel that it is a redundant concept. They feel that those who are talking about transforming the society, especially our society, Indian society, into a Ramarajya, are in a fantasy world. They feel that they are dreamers, trying in vain to bring back an old and obsolete mythical picture into contemporary society. That is the contemporary society of reality, the realistic society. So, to such people, Ramarajya is at best a fanciful dream, never to be actualized, an unreal dream, a utopian ideal, never meant to be actualized. That is it, never even meant to be actualized or translated into reality. Now, the question is, are we concerned with whether something will be achieved or whether something can be achieved? There is a lot of difference between the two. Whether something will be achieved or not is not our cup of tea, because it is not in our hands. But whether something can be achieved or not is well within our reach. That is, the point is there a means available to achieve what we desire to achieve? That is the point. Is there a means to actualize what we call Ramarajya? That is the point. And that is what we are trying to discuss or look into now. And if there is a means, what is it? What is that means? If there is a means, if there is such a means, it is up to adopt it or disregard it. That is also there. So the point is there a possibility to accomplish a Ramarajya or not? If there, what is it? Are we willing to adopt it? So for that, we will need to first understand the meaning of Ramarajya. There are at least two ways of looking at the term Ramarajya. It has at least two meanings, a literal meaning and a literary meaning. Most of the time, we have only the literal meaning in our mind. What is it? The Rajya of Lord Rama, the kingdom of Rama. If this is Ramarajya, naturally the question would arise, why discuss it now at all? What has a very, very ancient and hoary past to do with the present, contemporary reality? How can it cater to the present needs of contemporary society? Such a question is very natural. Not only that, not very many people know what kind of kingdom Rama's kingdom actually was. Thanks to our modern education, the highly westernized modern education, we do not know much about Rama or Rama's kingdom, Rama's Rajya. Some have heard that it was something of an ideal kingdom. But even they might wonder, so what? What if it was an ideal kingdom? What is its relevance today? A place called Ayodhya, a kingdom called Ayodhya, a very, very remote past time. A noble king, a righteous king called Rama ruled it. Okay, it was a prosperous kingdom. It might have been a very, very highly prosperous state. Okay, but what is its relevance today? Is such a society possible anymore? Is it actually required even? Haven't the times changed altogether? Haven't societies changed? Haven't political systems changed? Haven't administrative systems changed? So, in this changed scenario, should we still visualize a modern society in terms of certain concepts inscribed in a mythical or mythological text? Yeah, that is how the majority of Indians regard the Ramayana, as mythology. The majority of Indians do not know that the Ramayana actually narrates the story of an actual historical event. The general public, the Indian society at large, does not know that the Ramayana is an itihasa, and that itihasa means history told as story. So they still consider the Ramayana as a mythology. Anyway, that was just an incidental digression. Let us come back to our topic. Now, there is another big group of people who delight in criticizing and vilifying Rama. The only thing they know about him is that he abandoned Sita. And paradoxically, it is the same people who profess that they are committed to establishing an incorrupt democratic society who find fault with Rama for abandoning Sita. That is the contradiction. So, in their minds, in spite of the fact that Rama became ready to physically part with his inseparable soulmate for the sake of their subjects, Rama becomes an object of criticism and even ridicule. So, this is one side. Now, the other side, the literary meaning of Ramarajya. Ramarajya is a figurative expression, a literary expression. It implies an ideal Rajya, an ideal state, a model state, a righteous and prosperous state, something like a welfare society in which everyone gets one's due, one's share of everything one needs, something of an equitable society. That is Ramarajya. Now, the Ramayana, especially Valmiki's Ramayana, demonstrates to us that Rama's Ayodhya was indeed such a state. How? Or rather, why? Because Rama's Ayodhya was firmly founded on the principle of dharma. Rama himself was an embodiment of dharma, the very epitome of dharma, dharma vigraha. That is how Maricha describes Rama in Valmiki's Ramayana. So, Ramarajya becomes the metaphor for an ideal state where the foundation has been laid and the socio political mold has been made for people to live and coexist as a healthy, productive, constructive, creative, harmonious, and even futuristic society. That is what is implied by Ramarajya. Now, the thing is, don't we need such a society? Isn't such a state still valid anywhere, at any time of human evolution? Isn't it actually everybody's dream and wish that one should have the circumstance and infrastructure to realize or actualize one's legitimate aspirations and needs and dreams? Don't we need harmony? Don't we expect harmony in a society? Don't we need peace and contentment? Aren't all these things the need of the hour? If so, we can say that we are still visualizing a Ramarajya even now. It is never a redundant notion. It is not obsolete. Of course, we may not be using the term as such now. It is true. It is not a very common usage. We may be using English expressions to express this need. Or we may even be using other contemporary expressions, linguistic expressions and terminology to refer to this notion of nation. Whatever it is, we are unconsciously waiting for a Ramarajya, conceptually, isn't it so? Now, suppose that a Ramarajya has been established. Suppose that the infrastructure has been laid down, the system has been laid down. Still, another question might arise. Will the people actually be responsible enough to live up to the standards and expectations of this paradigm, this model called Ramarajya? That depends on their maturity. The government, the administrative system, can only create the right political environment for it. Afterwards, it is up to the people to live in it. It is up to the people who live in it to fill it with a rich, meaningful, and fruitful social life. And how will the people get the maturity required for it? By inculcating and internalizing certain values or value systems. Where from? From a sound and realistic educational system. A sound and realistic educational system is of utmost importance for Ramarajya to exist. No Ramarajya can exist merely as a political entity. There is a lot more to Ramarajya than just a political or an administrative system. That is why I said a very sound and realistic kind of educational system is a must. So then here we come to two more questions. What do you mean by education? Where does education begin? That is it. We know that there are a whole lot of definitions to education. But now let us not get into all that. We only need a conceptual understanding of the notion or the idea of education. What exactly education means or what exactly education implies. That is enough. Education simply means the process of actualizing one's innate potential, isn't it? It is as simple as that. Education is a period of studies. And what exactly does study mean? Is it just memorizing facts? No, not at all. Is it just the intellectual understanding of various concepts? No, it is not just that. It is much more than that. Is it studying various texts and imbibing textual knowledge? No. All these are part of education, but education is much, much more than that. It is actually the development, the all round development and perfection of yourself, isn't it? Which means it involves awakening and sharpening your abilities, your performance, actualizing your talents, skills, and even the unknown possibilities lying latent deep within. So that means education is inner evolution. It is an individual business, not a group affair. The individual grows. The individual grows and evolves internally, inwardly, outgrowing each and every limiting factor and subsequently at least becoming a healthy personality. I repeat, at least becoming a healthy personality. Because that is the minimum requirement, the minimum expectation from education. You must become at least that, a stable individual, a healthy personality. And what do you mean by a healthy personality? An integrated personality. What do you mean by an integrated personality? What do you integrate into a personality? It means a personality in which the basic components, namely the body, the mind, and the intellect, are integrated and they function in unison with, or in tandem with, or in sync with each other. This is the minimum requirement of education. Education must have accomplished at least this much. This is how you create a stable personality, a stable individual, an integrated individual. Of course, this is not the ultimate end of education. Its ultimate end is much, much more than that. But at least this much it must have accomplished. Otherwise, you can never say that any system of education has achieved perfection or yielded fruit. Now, just imagine a group of such balanced individuals living together in a particular place. What do you call this group of individuals? What do you call a group of individuals? Society, isn't it? Society. We always talk about society. We always talk about transforming the society. Our educational systems, our academic syllabi talk about transforming the society. The press the media talks about transforming the society. But is there actually something called society? Is society a reality or is something else a reality? Is there something called a society? No. What is actually there is just individuals. The only reality is the individual. Society is just an umbrella term we apply to a group of individuals. The reality is individuals. Just like you talk about a forest. Is forest a reality or trees the reality? The reality is trees, isn't it? A cluster of trees, we call it a forest. The only reality is the tree in it. If you want to maintain a forest, preserve a forest, you need to preserve the individual trees in it, isn't it? So, like that, in a society, there are just individuals. Society is just a word, it is just a term which refers to a group of individuals. So, the actual reality is individuals. Now, is there something like a concert? No. What is actually there is just a number of individual musical instruments, isn't it? You fine tune each and every instrument and you get a beautiful musical experience. And that combined musical experience you call a concert. A concert is just a word. The reality is instruments, individual instruments. Like that, fine tune each and every individual human being, and then the togetherness and companionship will naturally create a fine tuned society. This fine tuned society is what you call Ramarajya. Now we will try to understand the four ashramas in an individual's life. Of course, our thrust will be on Grihasthashrama, but in order to understand Grihasthashrama properly, we will have to situate it or position it against the background of the other three stages of the life of an individual. We usually talk about four stages in the life of an individual. The Brahmacharya stage, Grihasthashrama, Vanaprastha, and Sannyasa. All of us have heard of it. What do these terms mean? How can we understand them in contemporary language? Brahmacharya can be understood as studenthood or the preparatory stage, the phase of education, the phase of training. Training for what? Training for life and living, life and livelihood. So, Brahmacharya is then essentially a phase of withdrawal. To withdraw does not mean to remain a recluse forever. An initial phase of withdrawal is always necessary for any activity to achieve maximum performance, isn't it so? Can you deny it? Preparation always needs withdrawal, whichever be the field, whether it is arts or sciences or even sports or driving, whatever it is. Preparation always needs an initial period of withdrawal. And this initial withdrawal is to take the plunge into activity later on, when you are well equipped and when we are qualified for it. See, for example, you wield the bow and arrow. What is your aim? Your aim is to shoot the arrow, and you want the arrow to achieve maximum distance, isn't it? The arrow that you shoot must travel maximum distance. If so, what will you have to do? Can you straight away project the arrow forward? No. It will, of course, go forward, but it will fall down immediately. So it has to withdraw first. The arrow must be pulled back in the very opposite direction of its travel. Only then maximum energy, maximum power, maximum competence can be achieved. Then you shoot the arrow, and then the performance is maximum, isn't it? So you can understand Brahmacharya as a sort of gymnasium, something like a kalari, a preparatory phase of withdrawal from the world, withdrawal from the society. Why? To collect oneself, to consolidate oneself, to organize oneself, and thereby to strengthen and empower oneself. And like that, you equip yourself to face the world and live in the world well. So, this is the phase of Brahmacharya. That is, Brahmacharya is a space where you nurture your physical abilities, mental abilities, intellectual abilities, spiritual abilities, and integrate all these things. You integrate your whole self. It is a stage of clarifying your understanding and perception of the inner world and the outer world. It is a stage of integrating the climate within with the climate without. And it is in this phase that you generate a knowledge system and understand the need to pursue and preserve a value system which is deduced out of this knowledge system. So the next phase is Grihasthasrama. Education is now over. During the Brahmacharya phase, you have understood the nature of life and existence. You have understood the nature of ultimate reality. You have perfected specific skills. You have acquired specific knowledge in specific areas or subjects of your interest or your aptitude. You have nurtured your natural talents, and now you are finally ready to step into life, step into real, raw life. And that next stage is called Grihasthashrama. So, Grihasthasrama is the stage of implementation of the training you have already acquired, the application of the knowledge you have attained, the actual practice of that knowledge. It is the phase of achievements and accomplishments, all sorts of achievements and accomplishments in all walks of life. It is the phase of setting up a family and finding dharmic ways to sustain that family, improve the family, expand and enhance the family. It is also the phase of actualizing your legitimate needs and dreams and aspirations. It is the phase in your life of ensuring the continuity of your family lineage. All this is Grihasthasrama. In fact, the majority of the activity that you find in the world happens during this specific phase of human life called Grihasthasrama. Now the next stage, Vanaprastha. Vanaprastha is the stage of retirement. Your Grihasthasrama dharma is over. Your duties and obligations have been fulfilled. You have tasted the world enough. You are satiated. You have contributed to the world in your own measure. Now you feel that enough is enough. You recall the greater call of life about which you had learned during the Brahmacharya phase. You now want to devote yourself entirely to that goal. For that, now you need to wind up all your present engagements and pack up. This stage of mental and even physical retirement from your worldly activity to prepare for the last stage of sannyasa, the culmination of life, is called vanaprastha. You are packing up. You are in the retirement mood. You have already entered the retirement mood. You are packing up. You are winding up things. You are entrusting the responsibilities of Grihasthasrama with the next generation. You may continue to live with them or move away from them. That is your choice, and that is the choice of the situation, whatever it is. That attitude, that mental attitude, that climate is called Vanaprastha. And then comes sannyasa, the phase totally devoted and committed to the ultimate goal of life and actualization of it. That is sannyasa. So the focus of our present discussion is Grihasthasrama. That is why we will not be going into Vanaprastha and sannyasa now. We are just looking at Grihasthasrama in the context of Ramarajya. During the Grihasthasrama phase, whatever you generate in your family will also become a contribution to society. That is the link between family and society. Griham, or home, or family, is the smallest unit of society. The little child starts tasting society in the family. The family is the microcosm of society. It is at home, in the family, that the child starts picking up its first lessons of life. It starts picking up the rudiments of education. It learns how to accommodate other individuals. It acquires a value system. It gets a realistic social experience. It understands that a ceiling on desires is absolutely inevitable because you simply cannot satisfy all your desires in this wide, vast world. This oppressive, challenging world. It gets a training in utilizing energies in the right proportion. All this happens during Grihasthasrama. And now let us come to the relationship between Grihasthasrama and Ramarajya. From this itself, you must have understood that the relationship between family and nation is a very natural and organic relationship, isn't it? You can in fact say that the nation is nothing but an extended family. If the family is the smallest unit of society, the nation is the largest. Which means, if the family is perfect, the nation is naturally perfect. You cannot make the nation perfect without first making the family perfect. So here we find a very natural progression, a progression from the individual to the family, to the village, to the country or nation, Rajya. A nation should consist of individuals established in all these four stages, well established in all these four stages, so that Whatever group they may form as part of interpersonal worldly dealings will be an ideal group. In fact, an ideally real group. And the largest such group is called a country. And such a country, such a well organized country, such a disciplined country, such a balanced country is what we call Ramarajya. Now, let us also discuss the two broad paths towards the fulfillment of life, the Pravritti Marga and the Nivritti Marga. The Indian tradition holds that there are broadly two paths to self actualization. It is that we said as the Pravritti Marga and the Nivritti Marga. The Pravritti Marga is the path of activity, and the Nivritti Marga is the path of withdrawal and abstinence. The second path, the Nivritti Marga, is not for all. It requires a special mold of constitution to take to that path. It is not possible for all. There are only very select few who can follow it. Of course, their numbers might be high, but the proportion in a society is very, very small. Not all can go that way. The common and general path is the path of activity, worldly activity, pravritti. Family is part of this worldly activity. Social life is part of this worldly activity. Participation is Participation in national life is part of this activity. All accomplishments and achievements in the worldly sphere belong to this path. It is the path of extinction of karma through karma. That is it. And the cradle of all this is Grihasthashrama. The cradle of even sannyasa is Grihasthashrama. Because it is in this phase that everything is born and nurtured, everything evolves, and everything flourishes. And what is the core of Grihasthashrama? Brahmacharya. It may seem surprising and even shocking to hear this, but it is the truth. The only thing is, there is a subtle difference between the Brahmacharya practiced by someone in the Nivritti Marga and the Brahmacharya practiced in the Pravritti Marga of Grihasthasrama. There is a great difference between the Brahmacharya of a monk and the Brahmacharya of a householder. That is all. In order to understand this, we must keep one thing in mind. Just now, we discussed the four stages or phases of human life, and we saw that Brahmacharya was one of them. Now, we will have to understand Brahmacharya as a practice or as a principle that unites all these four phases. A principle, a unifying principle that runs through the entire lifespan of an individual. That is, Brahmacharya is actually the unifying thread that connects the individual to the nation through Grihasthasrama. The individual, the Grihasthasrama, the nation. That is the model, that is the equation. First, there is the individual. The individual needs to be perfected. And this perfection of the individual is achieved through the practice of Brahmacharya. And such well formed individuals constitute a healthy family. And several such families make a nation. And the string that unites and holds together all these is Brahmacharya. How? That is where we will have to discuss the meaning and the relevance of Brahmacharya in Grihasthasrama. In Grihasthasrama, Brahmacharya is rather a mental attitude. Brahmacharya means focus, sharpness of execution of work, karma kushalata. The Gita calls it karma kushalata. Effectiveness and perfection in all that you do. Health and perfection and beauty even in interpersonal relationships. It is actually indulgence in all human karmas, but practicing detachment and attaining focus in all of them. It means not abstinence, but following the right proportion in anything you indulge in. It is not abstinence from sexuality and sensuality either. After all, they are part of human life or natural life. It is also not abstinence from enjoyment of the physical world and its material fruits, but embracing them in their own terms, in such a manner that you don't lose track of your higher goals of life, and also don't create discord in the sphere of your activity, whichever be the sphere. In behaving with other members in the family, in your attitude to your life partner, in your dealings and interactions with all of them, everywhere you will need to follow the right proportion. Even in the conduct of your own personal self, you will need to observe moderateness. That is Brahmacharya. Moderateness, focus, proportion, and a sense of dharma which imbues everything. A sense of dharma in all actions and activities. All this falls within the space of Grihasthashrama. This is all Brahmacharya. And what will Brahmacharya achieve for you in Grihasthashrama? Simply put, it will put things in the right perspective. It will enable you to see things as they are. It will give you a detached and equal vision. It will enable you to see things in black and white. That is, you will get a realistic picture of your family, of the family. You know that there are several individuals in the family. Everyone has one's own makeup, one's own distinct individuality or personality. Every one of them is a limited personality with merits and demerits alike. Understanding this reality and treating everyone in one's own terms is Brahmacharya. Every individual has limitations. At the same time, everyone has certain qualities in terms of which it is possible for us to relate with them. Identifying these possibilities and accepting the individual, relating with the individual, establishing a fruitful lifelong relationship with the individual, that is Brahmacharya. Ignoring the inconducive elements in an individual's personality, knowing that there are such personality defects in you also, that is Brahmacharya. Accepting emotions and feelings as natural, expressing them oneself, and allowing others also to express theirs, that is also Brahmacharya. Understanding the basic fact that interpersonal relationship is essentially one based on agreement and disagreement is Brahmacharya. It is very important that we get clarity, great clarity of situations. You should know what to take in and what to keep out. Of course, a family will need to go through several kinds of situations, even several critical situations. During such times, the most important requirement is clarity of vision, equanimity of vision. Several factors might be playing upon the family. Then you should know which to keep out and which alone to entertain. Otherwise, relationships could break, hearts could break, families could break. So, it is the practice of Brahmacharya in every aspect of family life that preserves the unit, that indivisible unit called family. That is why Brahmacharya becomes an individual practice on the one hand and a sustaining principle on the other. See, how can a disintegrated individual integrate a family? And how can disintegrated families integrate a nation? This integration is what we call Brahmacharya. Integration at the individual level, at the family level, and naturally at the nation, at the national level. So attaining control and mastery over oneself is the prime requisite. That is Brahmacharya at the individual level. Once that is attained, one can step into Grihasthasrama, equipped with its strength. If so, one will be able to conduct oneself in the Grihasthasrama space very well. Even when it comes to marital relationships, exercising restraint in physical and emotional relationships with the partner, that is Brahmacharya. Because ultimately, Brahmacharya implies the consolidation of your vital energies and not allowing them to dissipate. Because it is these vital energies that keep all your faculties sharp: memory, intellect, performative ability, everything. So, in all these areas, promiscuity must be avoided. That is Brahmacharya. And while you enjoy all the pleasures that the family space might bring you must be always able to retain the awareness that it is as a result of the karmas of various jivatmas that such and such people have come together to live together as a family. Which means there is a divine destiny, there is a karmic destiny to your family, any family. We must be able to have the constant awareness that ultimately all these souls are sublimating the karma through the group activity called family life. That is, it is a divine drama that is being enacted out in the format of a family. And we all are playing our roles, and we must play them to perfection. This constant remembrance is Brahmacharya. Putting in practice this remembrance is Brahmacharya. And ultimately, orienting the individual lives of all the members of the family Godward and dedicating the whole family to God, that is also Brahmacharya. So, the difference between the implications of Brahmacharya for a monk and a householder, that is very subtle. From all this, we understand that Brahmacharya has two sets of implications for the monk and for the householder. You cannot mix both. For the monk, it is abstinence because he or she has already gone through the materiality of life in previous lifetimes. But the householder is yet to finish that phase, and so there is no running away from it. So the householder must convert his family into a divine family, a divine activity. This is possible by exercising what you call mitatva, or the right proportion, at the right at all the levels of physical, the mental, and the intellectual, and thus dedicating oneself to God. This is Brahmacharya. So we understand that Brahmacharya is required in all phases of life: your personal life, your individual life, your private life, in social life, which begins from the Grihasthashrama and extends right up to the nation. And Brahmacharya becomes complete when you grow and evolve and expand to such a situation that ultimately you become as big as the universe itself. When your sense of self becomes as vast and as expansive as creation itself, where you finally experience the reality that you are not the finite self that you right now think of you to be, but the infinite cosmic self. That is, of course, the ultimate phase or the ultimate stage or the ultimate goal of what you call education. Until then, it is Brahmacharya that sustains you, irrespective of whether you are a monk, a renunciate, or a householder. So, this is why I titled the session like this, so that we can identify Brahmacharya as the unifying principle that links the individual to the family to the nation. I hope the concept has been made clear. So, for the time being, let us stop and I dedicate my words at Amma's holy feet. Thank you, all of you.
Thank you so much, Madhuji, for joining us today and giving us this wonderful session. I'm sure your talk has inspired many to embrace the concept of Ramarajya and give deeper thoughts on applying it in their lives. I also thank our attendees for joining us today. We expect your sincere cooperation and participation in the upcoming sessions on Grihasthashrama by Amma's Grihastha children themselves. Finally, most importantly, I offer my infinite salutations at the lotus feet of Amma for blessing us with this unique opportunity to learn, understand, contemplate, and appreciate Ramarajya. Let us now wind up the session with a Shanti Mantra. Om Lokaah Samastaah Sukhino Bhavantu लोकाः समस्ताः सुखिनो भवन्तु। लोकाः समस्ताः सुखिनो भवन्तु। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। ॐ श्री गुरुभ्यो नमः। हरि ओम्। ओम नमः शिवाय।